I have been playing video games since the day my body and brain were capable of it, and in all of my time doing so, I don't think I have ever played a game or a thing as bizarre as Super Mario 64 B3313. The best way I can describe this game is by saying that it's like Super Mario 64 met LSD Dream Emulator for the PlayStation, except that is nowhere near adequate. The truth is that this game is so strange and eerie that it defies description, but not for lack of trying. When this game was recommended to me, it was described as an LSD trip with beta aesthetics or something very similar to that effect. Now, I was immediately sold on this premise, mostly because I was still on a high from that spectacular Ocarina of Time Space World demo recreation. Although I was kinda curious as to how the LSD thing factored into it. I wasn't really sure what that was going to mean, and I certainly didn't think it would mean what it ended up meaning. And that was real mean. Before we get into the LSD stuff, let's discuss the beta part of it. This hack reworks some of the levels into an artist's interpretation of their beta counterparts based on the limited footage and photos that we have. According to my memory, I think some of the information for the Super Mario 64 beta was found in the GigaLeak, which gave us the Ocarina of Time beta maps, but I don't think we got nearly as much on the Mario 64 front in the end. The majority of the changes, at least on the part of the beta versions of the game, are presentational with different textures all over the place, slightly different art direction in many areas, Mario's beta voice, which is mostly comprised of Warner Bros. Sound library clips, an interpretation of the old HUD, and many different sound effects. There are a couple changes to how Mario controls, like how the ground pound is instantaneous or turning around is a little more jerky and sudden. Mario's jumping is a lot more floaty and he launches himself much higher than usual. He enters his spinning animation when you do the triple jump, and like I said, some of the levels are reconfigured based on old screenshots and videos. But otherwise, the rest of this hack is largely original and based on bizarre interpretations. The funny thing is, beta versions of games you've already played are kind of like liminal worlds on their own, in that they seem vaguely familiar but simultaneously wildly different. The feeling of exploring that Space World ROM, for instance, was exciting because it was a new experience, but also kind of creepy because of how different and weird everything seemed to be. To make a beta-inspired hack would have been funky enough, but this game is not that. It is so much more than that, and I'm not even sure I can put it into words. But I'm gonna try. At first, this game just looks like a regular beta restoration project, but after playing through the game regularly for more than a couple minutes, it becomes clear that this game is far more complicated. Playing through this game is like a gradual descent into insanity, where everything just gets more and more bizarre and difficult to comprehend as you go along. One of the things I love about this hack is how perfectly it captures the unearthliness of unexplainable dreams. Much like the hallucinations that we all have when we go unconscious every night, the world ranges from having familiar elements with a couple of things that are just barely off enough to be discomforting, to having these strange liminal spaces that feel strangely familiar even though you have never once seen them before because they aren't real. The first time you enter the castle, you are completely lost in its bizarre labyrinthine design. Every single door leads you down a rabbit hole of hallways and rooms which all branch off into their own rabbit holes. If you get a star, it puts you back to this part of the hub world. If you lose a life, it kicks you to a different part of the hub world. If you beat Bowser, you get dropped here. If you go through this door, you end up here. Sometimes you end up here, except this here is a completely different here from the here you thought was here, even though this here looks exactly the same as the other here from before. Paintings will change in between missions, and going into the same painting more than once can send you into a completely different version of the exact same level. Sometimes while you're playing the level, the entire level's visual themes and texture palette will just switch on a dime. Sometimes the entire fucking level will just turn into a different level out of nowhere. I simply cannot tell you everything that happens in this game because I don't even know what happens in this game. It's like Silent Hill or something. It's so mysterious and psychological that I feel like a clueless idiot running around a madman's haunted house. But eventually, you slowly start to gain a familiarity with the insane cryptic layout of this world, and as you gain that familiarity, you start to become an insane man yourself. but inevitably you stumble upon another thing you haven't seen before and you're back to square zero. In a weird way, the actual normal levels are the most unsettling parts of the game because they're fun to play, and they lure you into a false sense of normalcy, but you always have this awareness that it's nothing more than a temporary distraction, so that you don't think about the fact that you'll inevitably have to go back to the eerie hallways of the castle. The world of B3313 is like the Overlook Hotel from The Shining. It's so full of unsettling imagery and sounds that build up a ridiculous amount of tension. It's like it's constantly trying to push you to the edge of your seat in anticipation of a jump scare, except there aren't any jump scares, which is somehow even more scary. And truly the most scary part of it is just how little is actually explained to you. Even the scariest things in media tend to lose their punch upon subsequent viewings and readings because the narrative structure typically requires them to explain everything to you in the end. The things that remain the scariest are the ones where it's never adequately told to you what you just saw or what you just experienced, and that is exactly what this hack is. It's a mystery. I don't know what this thing is. I almost wonder if there's some kind of meaning to it all, like this is a story about the futility of the pursuit of knowledge or the nature of momentary happiness. Is the room with the giant cake that kills you if you get anywhere near it a metaphor for all the wonderful things in life that are just out of our reach that we're not allowed to have for one reason or another? Are the oversized, disproportionately large rooms and hallways intended to make you feel insignificant, like an insect who has negligible influence on the world at large despite thinking highly of itself? The stars basically do nothing because almost all of the doors are already open anyway, making the obtaining of the stars a meaningless endeavor that just happens to feel good even though we don't actually know why. Perhaps this is a metaphor for how we constantly seek temporary pleasures to distract ourselves from building a better life and a better world even though they don't help us in the long run. Or maybe it's just a good simple story about a man who hates a turtle. I don't even know if this game has an end. Shit, I don't know if it has a beginning, or a middle, or a fucking annotated bibliography. I'm not sure if it's building up to anything. I can't even tell you if it's good or bad. It's just fascinating. It sucks you in and lets your imagination run wild and try to fill in all the ominous and ambiguous blanks. But I think I'm starting to get in way over my head here, so I'm gonna have to call it. But I absolutely do recommend you play this hack. It is one of the most bizarre and fascinating pieces of work I have ever seen. As for me though, I think I gotta go. But I'll see you tomorrow for a, vacation.